Yes, indeed. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily on Channels Television. And you just heard former Head of State, General Abdulsalami Abubakar, talking about the introduction of another peace accord to commit politicians to ranker-free campaigns. But Mr. Falana may have set the tone for this next segment of our discussion, which will be focusing, amongst other things, on peace accords, decorum during elections, and also on the expectations of BVAS. That's where we're going to start off this time around as we welcome our next guest to this segment. He is legal practitioner, Mr. Emmanuel Imeribe. Mr. Matthias Imeribe, you're welcome to Sunrise Daily. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
My pleasure.
Let's start with, the outcome of one of today's reports from the Independent National Electoral Commission, talking about two conflicting BVAS reports from the Osun and Ekiti elections. What do you see to be the implication of this position by the Commission?
Thank you very much. For me, it is a sign of danger for the 2023 general election. It's a sign that tends to give an impression that INEC is not yet ready with respect to the electronic form of election which the current Electoral Act has subscribed to. Now, if that were to be the case, the import is that the 2023 election is in jeopardy because the whole essence of the 2022 Electoral Act is to checkmate the rigging process that had been the order of the day in the previous election. Now we intend to get it right. But if this kind of report is coming up from the same body, it's worrisome. And it's a worrying sign that the 2023 general election is in danger. And that is, for me, why I said that, look, it is not enough to have a good law. If the enforcers, or better still, the operators of that law have fraudulent mindset, it has the tendency of destroying the entire thing.
So does it touch on the integrity of the BVAS or the integrity of the Commission? Because
for me,
we understand how the BVAS works. It captures the biometrics, the personal information of the voter. So does it touch on the integrity of the BVAS or of the Commission?
Well, let me say something. The BVAS was a product of the independent body itself. Meaning that it was human that brought it about, as the case may be. Now, if today, as it stands, they are beginning to raise issues by themselves in what they themselves have placed what you may call confidence in, then what then do we as outsiders, how do we want to see them and in respect of the BVAS itself? So, for me, I will not begin to talk about, after all, the BVAS is a machine operated by human. So if there's going to be anybody I'm going to look up to for purposes of whether there's a fault or problem, it is the person or the personalities that are operating that particular machine. So if you have the wrong set of personalities, perhaps if they don't have experts or those who know how to operate the BVAS operating same, it could be the problem. And meaning that it is the persons that are the problem and not the machine itself that is the problem.
Well, perhaps to explore that for a little bit, Mr. Meriwe, I remember some weeks ago, Yaga Africa, after some time, also flagged, the same report, even before this, conversation by INEC, began to come out that, look, they're checking through their records and all, initially had said, I think sometime in July, had said, no, it was consistent. And then out of the blues, I think in September, was like, look, we're not very sure how this thing is going like that. Some data are inconsistent. So in that light, is that to fault the entire process, or perhaps to put it better, what segment of the election would you now want us or suggest to INEC, to us, to pay a little more attention to? Because it would seem the conduct of the election itself seems okay until a particular point.
Now you know that election is even a process. It's not just simply on the day the election was conducted. Now, but that particular day when the election is going on is so crucial and important that if it is not gotten right, the entire process leading to that particular day will be of no moment. Now, for me, if on that day, the use of, because for you to make use of BVAS, that is machine or electronic instruments of that nature, it must have gone through a lot of tests so that you now know the margin of error and know what to look out for. Now, if all of these things have not been done, that is why I said I place the blame on the doorstep of those operating the machine itself. So meaning that INEC too must look inward to know those they are deploying to handle those machines. Because if they end up having those who have partisan interests, because in most cases, why you find these things malfunctioning at times may not be unconnected with where there are vested interests in trying to manipulate the machine to suit a particular purpose. And when they fail, the implication is that the entire system is affected. So, but if you have a straightforward mindset, even if you have what you may call, you say, okay, I want to do some, but because you say, no, the intention is that let us get it right, you probably will see it work. There will be no problem.
And just to follow up on that,
Yeah.
is INEC trying to say that this would have an impact on the outcome of the results of the Osun and Ekiti election already declared? Is that what INEC is trying to say?
If you know, but for all intents and purposes, because if the BVAS has a problem, by virtue of the current Electoral Act, you know, if it were before, reference is to the manual accreditation. But today, reference is to that BVAS. That is, accreditation is by BVAS now. It's no longer the manual type. Before, the manual type is that when you come, they will check you, they tick. But this one is not an issue of whether they will check and tick. And even if it doesn't work, what do you have? You have the incident form. Today, the incident form is no longer there, so to say. Now, for me, like I said, it's a dangerous signal, so to speak. But I want to believe that the normal thing for the court, particularly the tribunal, in dealing with matters of this nature is to find out whether those errors are substantial to put or to nullify the entire election. If it is, we have no choice. The entire election will be nullified. Yes.
Okay. Well, Mr. Merive, how do you think this plays on the mind of the voter?
You know, that again is a fundamental question. And I would simply tell you that when a system begins to show signs of failure, what it does is to do what? To kill the confidence and the trust that the voters have in that system. And when that happens, we even have the worst case of voter what? Apathy. We've been complaining that people have not been coming to vote. The reason is not unconnected with the fact that people don't have confidence in the system. So when you now have a situation where that same system begin to frustrate those who have intention of coming out to demonstrate that they want to change the narrative, the implication is that it's not a good omen. So to that extent, the position is that if the government itself must do more than enough to make sure that the people in question, talking about the voters, come out. Because, look, if we have, let's say, last time, in talking about the current government itself, you have over how many voters? About 84 million people that registered to vote. But it's about 30 million that voted eventually. When I say 30 million, when you count the vote of those who lost and the one that won, if you put them all together, it's about 30 million. And for all intent, that is not a good sign that people, that you are now having just 30 million out of 84 coming to make somebody to be the president of the entire 200 and something million people.
And now we have about 96
million. So it means that legitimacy is a problem. And perhaps that could even be why we are probably having unrest virtually everywhere in Nigeria, as it were. So if you have enough, that is to say, if you have more than that number coming out to vote, let's say almost half or more than half of the number coming out, then you now know that, yes, legitimacy will be placed on the government. People will be willing and be ready to volunteer. There's nothing like where you have a situation where people are not asking you to bring money. On my own, I can take care of this site and I will do it and do it well. But when you have a situation where you have people coming in, every time people are asking you, for me to do this, you must mobilize me to do it. And it's not good for us.
Okay, but so now that this is out,
yes,
and still speaking to beavers that Bukola raised, what must INEC do now to instill confidence, or rather to retain confidence in the beavers?
Well, the ball is on should I say, is on INEC's court, as it were, to come out to give what you may call a reassuring message to the Nigerians. Unfortunately, I don't think there's any major election, just like the state election that we accept. Probably there may be Senate or House of Reps election, which probably, because it's not everybody that will be so interested in knowing what transpired there. The Ekiti and Osho election is a typical example of an election that people want to see and say, there's confidence in the electoral process. But if we are having this report, with all due respect, it is a bad omen. My take is that the chairman of the Electoral Commission must come out clean to now tell us that, look, if ABC is the position, because unfortunately, because it's already a matter that is in court, and therefore, it is not expected that he will come out to begin to make any comment concerning it so that it will not affect the outcome of the court process, so to speak. But I would want to believe that even without necessity of making reference to what is in court, what they have should give them confidence that we have the best. Whatever you find coming out from whether it is Ekiti or whether it is Osun has nothing to do with our preparation to give you the best in 2023. And I can assure you that with what we have on ground, with the experts we have and so on and so forth, perhaps, at most, call some experts to check the end product so that we know that this thing cannot repeat, so that they themselves will come out with their own report aligning with what INEC has. Well, so it cannot be an all INEC affair, so to say. Let a third party, equally, who is independent, go and look at the process, look at the machine, look at the beavers, and then come out with a position to the effect that, we believe that this, the process will work out fine.
So in reposing confidence in the electoral process, does it make you confident in the electoral process when you see that the name of the former governor of Akwa Ibom State and Senator Godswill Akpabio has been uploaded in INEC's portal, and INEC has indeed recognized him as the candidate following that court judgment?
If the electoral process is right, nobody will be afraid of anybody being on the ballot, because you can be sure that the people will decide who they want. And for sure, it is the people's vote that will count. But because in the past, let me put it, in the past, we have a system where individuals could manipulate the mechanism for voting or for the election itself. I cannot fathom, using, without prejudice to the governor of Imo State, so to speak, in respect of how he came into office in 2020. Just using 2 local government election results was all that he needed to upturn an entire state, if you understand the point I'm making. So if things like that happen, it doesn't give confidence. So, but if you have the best of an election, if the mechanism for voting is transparent and is put right, you can be sure that people will not bother because for sure the people's voice will speak. Doing an election wrongly is like committing a coup. It's as simple as that. When an election is not rightly done, it's a coup. In other words, you are having people that came in without the mandate of the people. And the tendency is that for them, they feel that they don't hold the people anything because they came in courtesy of their own words, individual effort, not the people's mandate.
Could INEC have appealed this court judgment? Because in its initial position before the court judgment, it had said that the only primary that it monitored was that of the other man, Ekpodum, in Akwa Ibom State. So could it have appealed this judgment?
Now, let me tell you, I'm aware that there are two cases concerning the Akwa Ibom, because you just took me there now, concerning the Akwa Ibom, senatorial, primaries. And I know that one is still in court. It has not been decided. The one that gave judgment in favor of Akpabio, the other party, who is the Udom, was not a party in that case. And that is where I have my worries concerning how this electoral process is going. Because I would have thought that naturally, even if, because from the conduct that was carried out, the primary that was carried out in Akwa Ibom, Udom was believed to be the one who won that particular primaries from that very senatorial, Now, and if that was the case, it happens that INEC, upon publishing the names, going by their guideline, and the names of these two parties were not published. But Akpabio felt that, look, my name ought to have been published. I'm the rightful person that is there. In going to court, it would be wrong that when they approached the High Court didn't bother to ask, that is to inquire, as to what would have necessitated INEC not putting, the other party not joining Udom in the case itself. So that it will be one case that will be decided, because it will look absurd that in the case that the subsequent one that will be coming up, Akpabio is there, Udom is there, and so on and so forth. Now, if you give judgment there, won't it be a conflict, depending on how the judgment goes? It probably will be a conflict over the one that came up first. So my take is that by the current Electoral Act, particularly Section 84:13, 14, that deals with parties going to court if they are not satisfied with complying with the Electoral Act, my take is that anybody approaching the court must disclose. The necessary parties must be there. The ground for any court assuming jurisdiction is where the necessary parties are made parties to that very case or suit. If the necessary parties are not there, that court does not have jurisdiction. So it will become a jurisdictional issue.
But isn't that something that I think, was it the NJC, or was it the Supreme Court that also already made it clear what electoral case could be heard where?
No, listen, what you have...
I'm trying to speak to what the issue you just mentioned now, about, who is joined in which case where. Yeah. So since that is already declared by the Supreme Court, I didn't...
I know the one you are talking about. You are talking of the case that happened, the Ogba's case. The recent judgment that was given by the Supreme Court. Yeah. In the Ogba case, that's the Ebonyi case, Ebonyi's case, where the Supreme Court said, no, Ogba was not a right because the appeal, it was not a party and therefore cannot validly bring an appeal in that very case. Yes. Now, that is why I said, for me, with the greatest respect, any case that appears to have been surreptitiously filed, that is secretly filed, even if a judgment is given in respect of that case, and bearing in mind that the necessary parties that ought to be in that case are not there, the court should not, there shouldn't be any this thing for the Court of Appeal to do or to strike it down.
But at the end of the day, it's something that lawyers do. You are a lawyer. It's the common man is not going to take the case to the court without a lawyer. So some lawyers, your colleagues who are lawyers, know all of these things. They are the ones, like you heard Mr. Falana said, they are the ones that will advise their clients.
I agree. I agree. But the judge too, has a very fundamental role to. Let me tell you.
There are certain things. Well, Mr. Meribe, just a second.
Right.
If it was the medical profession, there are no two ways about it.
Okay.
There is. It's not. You can't put the heart on the leg. Okay. I mean, because no matter how expert a surgeon you are, you can't put the brain in the place of the heart. So, yes. But that's, it would seem, what lawyers want to do: argue the case.
That is why you have lawyers.
Exactly.
Always on the other
exactly.
Sides. Yes.
Consequently, the ones who will either address their client for or against the case, right or not.
But it still falls on the shoulder of the judge.
To ensure that the law is not turned on its head.
Listen, yes. It still falls on the shoulder of the judge.
Why take the case to court in the first place if you know it was wrong?
No, listen. No matter what, let me tell you, there's this principle in law that says ubi ius, ubi remedium. Where there's a wrong, there's what? A remedy. There's a presumption that if I'm wronged, I must have a remedy.
Okay.
And so the proper place to ventilate such will be the court. But the court has a duty to ask questions, because he must know the import of every judgment that he gives. That before I give this judgment, what is the effect? Then you now have to do what? Inquire and ask. Is there any other party in this matter that is not part of this very thing? Let those who brought the matter now say no. So that you now know that that person has come to deceive the court.
So my concern is, in this case now, where yes. the other party, Ekpodom, was not named in this suit, was not joined in this suit, the judge in question has full knowledge of the Electoral Act, I presume.
Yes.
And why didn't the judge act on the Electoral Act in determining the case?
The judge, let me tell you, even though I've not read fully that judgment, as it were, but my presumption, my thinking is that that judgment was premised upon the former Electoral Act in terms of decision that was given therein. Why do I say so? Because from what I read, the judge was of the opinion that INEC does not have power to reject. Are you getting it? Reject any candidate submitted to it by the political world party after primaries. That was the position because that was the position then under the former Electoral Act. But if the court had adverted its mind seriously concerning the current Electoral Act, particularly with respect to Section 84, Sub 13 and 14 of the Electoral Act, the court would probably not have come to that conclusion.
So do you see an appeal?
Of course, there's no way this kind of matter cannot be appealed. Because one, the current state of the law couldn't have been referring us back to what you have in the past.
So
that would have defeated the essence of the Electoral Act that was just signed into law.
What effect then would this appeal and the other case that he says is a court, what effect do you think it will have on INEC's final list? Do you see a shuffle?
It depends on what the court will come up with, because asking me will now be preempting what the court will come up with in interpreting that provision.
I'm concerned. What does this do to the psyche of the voters? Because there are those who would say, we voted for Ekpodom in the election and not the senator whose name has now been published in INEC's website. So what does it do to the psyche of the voters, particularly ahead of the election?
First of all, let's get it right. The issue of the psyche of the voters, well, I don't think it was even in contemplation in the first instance during the primaries, because the primaries is done by a selected few. So it not depends on where the powers that be in that political party.
But it's a subset of the entire electoral process.
No, I agree.
The delegates are a form of voters.
Yes, that is a presumption. It's still a presumption, because you know how these things are done. Where there was somebody who calls himself the alpha and omega, quote and unquote, of the political party, say, this is the person we want, or I want. And again, some of the delegates, if you recall what happened during the primaries of most of these major political parties, you see somebody openly, in some of the videos, openly distributing money to say, this is my share of what I got from this. Meaning that it is a purchased, the mindset was, the true personality in terms of his mind and conscience has been mortgaged. So he rather made use of the mindset of those who said he should be there. So would you not say that is representing the people? The answer is, of course, no.
Okay. Finally, let's wrap this up on this one. What would be your appeal to the voter? they will keep getting assurances from INEC that this is going to be the best one for us. So, to the voter, going by what you said about voter apathy the other time, in 30 seconds, what would you say?
The truth remains that we cannot lose hope. It's our country. We have no other country. We just must not lose hope. And I believe that as long as we are consistent and we are resilient, we will get it right.
Okay. Well, I guess that's it then.
Yes, indeed. And the conversation never ends. Of course, we want to thank you very much, Mr. Matthias, legal practitioner who joined us in our legal studio to look at the entire process, the beavers, and, of course, the court cases leading to the election coming up very soon, in a few months from now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Please,